Is Temple football so bad, and why am I over the moon about the fact that this team is 2-0, even though they've only beaten a bad UMass team and an FCS team in Howard? I should not be this excited about being 2-0 based on this team's strength of schedule of games that they've played so far, but here we are. Gotta take the W's where you can because this team has been an embarrassment for the majority of my life, but I want to do some research as to why things have been that way. Practically their whole history, they've been an FBS team playing as an independent. They weren't particularly great or bad, they were just meh. But every now and then they would string together a couple of really good seasons, such as them winning 10 games in 1979. That would all change in 1991 as Temple would join the Big East Conference. They were in the Atlantic 10 for every other sport, basketball, soccer, whatever. But for football only, they would join the Big East. But unfortunately, they were bad. But how bad were they? They would have the lowest winning percentage of any team that played in the conference. They had far and away the lowest winning percentage of any team within conference play. And they never went to a single bowl game as a member of the Big East. You could say their best season as a member of the Big East was when they went 3-4 in conference play back in 1997, or when they won 4 games in 2001 and in 2002. If you look at the other teams within the conference, they had some really great teams. You had the Miami teams of the 90s and in the early 2000s, which also included the 01 Hurricanes, national champions, one of the greatest teams in college football history. You had Virginia Tech, which had Mike Vick. They would play in a national championship game. And West Virginia and Boston College had some pretty good teams in the 90s and in the early 2000s. I went on Reddit to see if anyone else was asking the question as to why Temple joined the Big East in the 90s. I found a very valid response, and it's that the Big East Football Conference was originally conceived as separate from the main conference with a few teams overlapping. Over time, more and more football teams were moved into being full-time members, but Temple never was. Villanova would never let them join as a full member, but the football schools saw value in letting Temple in for the Philly market. This is especially after considering that the stupidity of the non-football schools cost Big East Penn State. That tracks because Penn State, just like Temple, was in the A-10 conference for other sports, but then they officially joined the Big Ten in 1992. I also think that this response is valid because I remember for the longest time, there was never any talks of Temple and Villanova ever being in the same conference, strictly for the basketball reasons. Also worth noting in the 80s that Temple wasn't that bad. There was hope that they would be competitive. They just fell off a cliff. If you look below my head, this is Temple's record against future Big East schools in the 5 years prior to joining the conference. See, they weren't really that bad. There would be at least some hope that they would be able to hang with their future competition, but that clearly did not happen. And for referencing Wikipedia here, they had difficulty competing against teams with better facilities and bigger budgets. I also have the personal theory that Temple is in the same state as Penn State and Pitt. Basically, Penn State is going to have a monopoly on the best high school players within the state of Pennsylvania, and then Pitt's going to get the next best players. That pretty much leaves Temple eating the remaining breadcrumbs. In summary, you gotta be happy, you gotta be ecstatic, you gotta celebrate the wins when they happen, because for many years they were few and far between.